What is going on, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Thanksgiving movie review. Thanksgiving is a new horror movie directed by Eli Roth, starring Rick Hoffman. I know I liked him in Suits. I was a bit disappointed that his role in this movie isn't actually more because he is definitely the best actor in this movie. A lot of people hyping this movie up. I've seen some of the reviews. A lot of people really like this movie. Personally, I think it is one of the most generic slasher movies of all time. Like, we had Scream, is it 6 that came out? Was it Scream 6 that came out this year? And I think that movie, while being a generic slasher, was still better than Thanksgiving. In terms of expectations, I didn't really have any expectations going into this. As is with almost every horror movie that gets released these days, I have zero expectations. After Insidious The Red Door, I will never have expectations ever again for a horror movie. Let's just put it out there. Because for the most part, horror movies are never going to be amazing. They're there to scare you, but they are definitely the most tropey genre of movie there is. So like I said, I'd seen some of the reviews, so I thought maybe it could be really good. And to me, it was just very average. You know what I mean? Very average. The whole plot of this movie is centered around the Black Friday sales. This man, Rick Hoffman, owns this mega store in this town. I think it's called Plymouth. I don't know exactly where in the USA that's meant to be. I know in England where that is, but obviously it's set in the USA. And during Black Friday, there is a stampede of people outside, and his daughter and his friends decide to go into the building and get early access to try and get some of the goods. That leads to a stampede of people who break down the door, leading to 3 people being killed. And the subsequent year, Rick Hoffman's character decides, you know what, I don't need to close the store because, you know, it's a thing of the past. That whole corporate greed arc that we're so used to. That leads to this axe-wielding murderer to come back and start offing people one by one that were involved in the store incident from the year before. So yeah, that's pretty much the whole plot. And the murderer starts killing them off one by one. Pretty basic horror movie plot, if you ask me. But I think it has somewhat potential. It had somewhat potential to be decent. I don't think the plot was the problem with this movie. I think it was more of the absolute moronic characters that this movie has. And if you haven't seen Addison Rae's in this movie, who I guess she was one of the faces of TikTok when TikTok was really popping a few years ago. I guess she's moved away from that and decided to go into acting in movies. And I don't think she particularly is bad. She didn't irritate me at all, actually. It was more of the other people in her group because they are this weird group of Gen Z children, right, who are just absolutely irritating, bro. Like, I know that the main cast for horror movies are meant to be somewhat unlikable. Like, if you go back through the fucking history of horror movies, like, I watched Halloween the other day, and the teen protagonists in that movie are also irritating. They're meant to be kind of all the negative stereotypes of the sort of teen high school demographic at the time put into these characters, but fuck me, are these characters so irritating. It's beyond the belief. And then you have the stepmother. Don't get, oh, she's so irritating as well, bro. Like, some of these characters are annoying, and I guess it's meant to make it so when the killer kills them, you know, you kind of get some enjoyment out of it. But mate, the absolute brain on some of these characters was crazy. I'll never forget the one line of this movie: "Let's not split up." Just like fucking Scooby Doo, bro. 2 seconds later, they're like, "Okay, we're gonna go here," so they just split up. It was absolutely, it was just brain dead. There's this other scene where this one guy, his girlfriend, the killer's got his girlfriend with a knife, and he's holding a gun at the fucking guy. And he's like, "What the fuck do I do? What the fuck do I do, bro? Shoot him, bro. Shoot him." And then he gets his girlfriend killed as a result. Like, let's can we not add moronic things to the movie? That's what really gets me, especially about horror movies. It has to have this level of stupidity in characters for them to actually fall into certain traps. Speaking of the traps and the kills in this movie, one thing I will give this movie credit for is the gore and the murder in this movie. It's very good. Like, all the kills are pretty disturbing, and if you like that sort of slasher movie, like if you like maybe the Saw movies or Scream and stuff like that, I'm sure you'll like this movie and you'll find things to like about it. I think some of the kills were pretty fucking gruesome. Personally, not my type of thing, but I can see why a lot of people like it, and I give them credit for that. Sometimes you can see the fakeness of it. Like, there's one time where a girl gets her fucking torso just shredded by a fucking saw and her guts are hanging out, and you can see that the guy holding her is clearly a fucking crash test dummy or some shit, like a paper mache something. You can see it's a fake thing that he's holding. It's not an actual act. But for the most part, all of that in the movie was pretty good. I'll give him credit for that. I like Rick Hoffman. Big up that guy. I remember him in Suits. I don't know what he's been doing since Suits, but he actually puts a really nice performance in this. I wish he did more. In terms of any of the other characters, like I said, most of the characters are kind of irritating. There's this weird competing love interest thing going on for the main girl character, which I just found absolutely irritating, considering both of the boyfriends in this movie pay absolutely no significance to the plot. They're just there to kind of throw some confusion your way. Oh, one of them the killer, bro. I think it's this guy. No, it's this guy. And then that's the only reason they're in the movie, to add maybe some extra pointing the fingers on who it could be. In terms of the killer reveal, I'm not going to tell you who the killer was because that's a spoiler. But I think it was kind of doesn't really make sense. Like, yes, this guy is the killer. They should have given him a bit of a better motive at least. You know what I mean? They could have at least explored it a bit more at the start of the movie. I just feel like maybe they could have thought about it a bit more. But I guess he was probably the only candidate now that I think about it. But overall, what would I rate this movie out of 10? I mean, on Letterboxd, I gave it a 2.5. I mean, I give it like a 5.5 out of 10. It's a very generic horror movie. About average. About average. That's my take, ladies and gentlemen. I'll see you all in the next one.